All right, I am going to attempt to explain today's task by recording a video showing you all the steps. So we are going to start off today's workshop by going to our very own TODI, Table of Disruptive Ideas. Then we are going to pick a card, any card. We don't have a lot of time, so you'll have to be quick about this. There are about 90, I think it was 92 cards, but you'll have about 2 minutes to pick one. So don't be too picky. If you want to narrow it down, you can choose a theme. If you are, for example, very interested in transformative leadership, you can choose a theme, and then you can choose a time horizon. For those of you who were on the conference, I'll remind you that Horizon 1 was happening right here, right now. 2 was about 3 to 5 years into the future. Horizon 3 were 5 to 10 years, and 4 were in the far future, 10 years plus. So let's see. What do I have? Transformative leadership. Robots work and people get paid. Citizens' wage and taxation of robots. I like that concept. I think that sounds really cool. So you've just completed task 1, which was to pick a card, and you have a total of 2 minutes to do that. So you'll have to be quick. Then we are going to take this concept and we are going to dive deeper into it. And the way we're going to do that is that we take all of this text and we do Control-C, or the funky symbol on Mac, Command, I think it's called Command-C if you're on a MacBook, but Control-C to copy. And then you can close that down, and you will press on this link up here, link to a collection of ideas to change and inspire. So when we press on that, it's sort of hidden up there. Sorry, let me close down some tabs. Once you've pressed on that link, you will end up on our very own NotebookLM, where we have all the source material where TODI then comes from. So in the left-hand side here, you have your sources. I'm sorry that it's in Swedish. I will explain it in English. You have your sources. So these are all the group discussions that we had during the network, which then contains verbatim everything that was said, which then led to all of these concepts, ideas, cards. So with that, we then have the chat in the middle, which is our language module, which is where we can interact with the source material. So we will ask the AI here in the middle to then dive deeper into the card that we have chosen. Now we did Control Copy on the card, so we will do Control V in here in the chat box. So here's our card. Robots work and people get paid. Citizen wage and taxation of robots. Explanations of the card, and then we have some potential actors. Now I will go over here and I will do Shift, Enter, Enter, and I will type my question here. So I will ask, what do the sources say about this topic? And so now I've entered the card and I have posed a question. So it'll now dive into the sources and bring out the good stuff. So it's developed the idea a bit. I can read through this and see what I like. I don't have to do that right now though. But maybe when I read this, I get another question pop up in my head, and I'm thinking, what challenges are there to implementing this idea? Maybe. and we will get another answer. So now I have a bunch of new data, which is generated by the AI based on my questions about the topic that I have chosen. Now, the end goal of this is going to be found in this right-hand section here, which is called the studio of NotebookLM. But in order to create our own content, which is what you will find here, I'm going to show you in just a little bit what that looks like. But in order to be able to generate our own content, we are first going to do one more copy paste. So in this step, I'm going to put my mouse just at the very top of the card, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down to get all of the written context, and I'm going to do Control C again. And now that I have that copied, I'm going to press up here, which in English is going to say create notebook. When I create a notebook, I now get a completely new container, let's say, to interact with new materials. So the first thing it's going to ask me is to add your sources. And I'm going to look down here into the right-hand corner where it says paste text. So I'm going to press the button, and I'm going to Control V to paste the text here. So remember, that was all the text that I got from the previous notebook. And then I'm going to say paste. So I've picked a card. I've gone into the big NotebookLM, which is where all of Toadie lives. I've interacted with that, with the source material. I have then taken that interaction, put it in a new notebook, and I now have a notebook where this question in itself is isolated. And I'm going to tell you why we just did that. Now, this notebook only has the source, which was my previous interaction with the AI. So in the middle here, you're going to get first a brief of the, or a summary of the material. I can continue chatting with this, but I want to look over here into the studio again. This is where the NotebookLM magic happens, so to say. Here we can do a podcast, we can do a video, we can do a mind map, we can do a report, we can get quiz cards, or let's see, yeah, it can quiz us on the material, which this is also a quiz. I'm not sure what the difference is between these two. We have an infographic and we have a presentation. Now, these are both in beta, and I really hope that they work when we do this tomorrow. But for these purposes, we are going to ask you to stick to sound, video, infographic, and presentation. The other ones are good, but for the purposes of today, which is that we are going to present something about this idea in a pleasing way to each other, we're going to stick to the sound, video, infographic, and presentation. Now, on most of these cards, and on all the 4 that we recommend, you have a little pencil. So we could either press the big button. We are going to press the pencil first, though, which means that we are going to be able to adjust some things about the sound that is going to come out. So if I just take the podcast as an example, by default, it's a deep dive. So it's a lively conversation between 2 hosts that will go through and connect the topics in your sources. But we can also do a brief summary. We can have a critical expert looking at our sources and giving us constructive feedback, and we can have a debate. So those are different flavors to our podcast we can do. We can also choose our language. Now, if you're an English speaker by default, then your Google NotebookLM is probably going to be in English, and it should be in English here. But for the Swedish people doing this task, you can press choose language and you can type in English. If you don't do that, then the podcast that you get is going to be in Swedish, obviously. And if you do make a podcast in Swedish, it's going to be really hard to present to our English-speaking people. So do flip over the language to English if it isn't by default. You can also choose the length, which is short, standard, or long in English. I would suggest that you do it short because we don't have a lot of time here today. Once you dive into this yourself, you can choose whatever you want, but do a short for now so that you have time to present it. You can also prompt what should the AI hosts focus on in this chapter. Now, I think that we don't really have to dive into that for now. We can just leave that blank and let it focus on the entire source. Our source isn't very big. And then we press generate. Now remember, we pressed the pen on this to say we want it in English and we want it short. If we had just pressed the big button, then we would have had it be in Swedish and it would have been standard length. But now that we've gone through that, it is generating a podcast. And this is really what we are after in this. We can do another one whilst that one's working. So it is currently doing some AI magic in the background. Infographic. We can take a look at that. I'm going to choose the language again. I'm going to do it in English. I'm going to do it, choose orientation. We can have it lie down. That's good. Details, standard. We can have that. And we can also, again, in free text, we can describe what style we want. But I think the standard style is nice. So I'm going to choose generate. So it is generating both a podcast and an infographic for us right now. Now you notice that this takes a few minutes to generate, which is why we don't have a lot of time to choose a card. So we are trying to choose a card very quickly to start off. Then we enter the toady through the link up here. In the toady, we write a little bit back and forth until we have some more meat on the bones for the idea, so to say. As a Swedish expression, I don't know if that really translates into English, but it's developed, let's say that. We dive into it. And then we copied our conversation from here. We created a new notebook. And then we are generating our sources. Now this is going to take a few minutes, which is why it's a good idea to try and get here to this step as fast as possible. Now, whilst this is happening, we hope that we've been able to leave you enough time to actually get your sources on the road. So whilst you're waiting, do speak with the other people in your group. We understand that this is a bit of a, there's a lot of steps to this process in copy pasting, creating a new notebook, and so on. But we really hope that you'll be impressed with the results. And most of all, you are the owners of whatever results that you are going to get. The base content that we are using is the toady, which was generated from the network by the network. And with this exercise, we are really trying to give you control over the source material. And we are hoping that you will get something out of this workshop that you can bring home to your respective fields and be able to present in a fun and nice way that you get a nice overview. But whilst that's generating, I'm going to go back to the big toady and I'm just going to show you a little bit about the different sources, what they do end up with. So, for example, in this massive toady, or in this massive notebook, I should say, we have all the sources. These are hours and hours of conversations from from, I think it was roughly 80 people in different groups just talking about ideas. So a really big pool of data. And I chose before in this notebook to generate a PowerPoint, a presentation, which then, once it's done, turned out like this. Now, unfortunately, I didn't swap it over to English, but you'll have to trust me when I say that it's a good presentation. It's a really good presentation in Swedish. That's taken all of the sources and tried to not only explain them, but also draw them out in this bridge metaphor. That we have a healthcare system, which is collective wonder. And then on the next slide, we have, but new forces challenge the fundament. So, and I think that in the images, you can really see it. And then it starts talking about how we are going to develop forwards. So this one is a summation of all the cards. So it found 3 strategic shifts for a more humane future. I think that is brilliant. From isolation to community, from silos to system, and from reaction to proaction. Just 3 strong themes that I think that we touched a lot on during the conference. Let's see how we are doing. So on our taxing robots for a purposeful future, we've left that for a few minutes, and our infograph is done. So we've had some conversations and we've generated an infograph on the specific topic of taxing robots for a purposeful future. Let's see what the infograph has to say. When robots work, a future funded by a citizen's wage. So we got taxing automated labor, which leads into, let's see, we have the issue of AI and robots predicted to take over jobs, creating a societal money problem. But the automated labor was discussed as funding a citizen's wage through tax revenue, which will then distribute a universal basic income for all citizens. And whilst that's happening, we get a new purpose. And the existential crisis. Let's see, we need an economic system overhaul. Yes, well, you see that this is a pretty powerful infograph, and this is based on just a small pool of the overall sources that we used. Now, I really hope that we'll have enough time to generate some sources, each of us, and present it within our microsystems. If not, then you will have to enjoy them on your own a few minutes later. The sound overview is trying to generate still. I think that this is a popular service that a lot of people are using. But that is the idea, and then we will gather and we will harvest and we will discuss these ideas. And as a last note from NotebookLM, if you enjoyed what you created and in your in your study groups, if you enjoyed what you discussed and you want to continue the discussion, because this was just based on one source. But let's say that we find a bunch of other sources. Maybe we find some science where the citizen's wage has been tested. Then that would be a really powerful source to add to this, and maybe some automation and robotic sources. Then we can add that to just have even more better data to create something out of. But if we want to gather around and collaborate on something like this, then we can also, up in the top right corner, we can press share and we can invite each other in. So if you find that you connect really well over an idea and you want to keep the conversation going within this notebook, then you can add person.google@institute institution.no, for example. And we can invite them. And then this person will be invited to collaborate within this notebook. We have our podcast. Let's listen a little bit on what that sounds like.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a pretty radical future vision. It's from a Swedish policy paper called Robotbeskattning för medborgarlön.
Which translates to robot taxation for a citizen's wage.
Exactly. And our mission here is to really unpack this. The core idea is that machines do the work, they get taxed, and that tax money, it funds a guaranteed income for everyone.
Right. And this frees people up for what the authors call meaningful existential activities.
Which sounds very utopian.
It does. But what's interesting is that this whole discussion isn't just, science fiction. It's being driven by a very real economic problem.
The job losses from AI and automation.
That's it. There's this growing concept.
And that's it. Thank you so much for trying this out. I hope that we get some good results tomorrow and that this doesn't go heels up. All right, I'm out.